Hello everyone, and I am officially back from my temporary exile. I went over a week without uploading because I was focusing all of my time on my updated star card video that ended up being over an hour long, and then because I ended up with so much hero gameplay from thoroughly revisiting every hero to make sure I was giving out the best star card advice, I was able to put together a final hero ranking pretty quickly after that. However, because I was so focused in on getting those two videos out to you guys in a somewhat timely manner, I ended up missing a bunch of Star Wars gaming news that cropped up over the past couple of weeks. Now, most of what I didn't cover over the past few days to a week wasn't super important, and some of which I probably wouldn't have covered in its own video anyway. Like, they changed how XP events work in Battlefront 2, so now double XP is on the weekends and triple XP is every Wednesday, and also, unfortunately, I didn't end up getting out a trailer breakdown or my thoughts or anything on the Squadrons reveal, but thankfully you guys all have eyeballs and I assume watch the trailer yourself, so I just figured I'd rather get out my star card video sooner than delay it even further for something like that. However, there was a bit of news a few days back I really need to cover considering this is mostly a Star Wars gaming channel, and this news has huge implications for the future of Star Wars games, both immediately and years down the line. And honestly, the word huge might be a slight understatement, so I kind of need to cover this news, even though I'm a little bit late. However, before we get into that news, I do want to share something I've been thinking about a lot recently. Throughout these Star Wars movies, there have been a lot of characters that are just not all that friendly. They clearly have a lot of hate in their heart. I'm talking about Jabba the Hutt, Snoke, and even Watto, who is a legend, but is also a character that seems to always be angry or annoyed.
Credits will do fine.
No, they won't! I'm a Toydarian! My trick's gonna work on me. Only money.
Anyway, you know what all of these angry Star Wars characters have in common? Every single one of them lacks a thick head of hair, which got me thinking, maybe the hate in the heart of these characters comes from regret over something they couldn't control. Maybe Watto spends his days on Tatooine longingly thinking back to the time when his hair was legendary, until one day it began to fall out, and because Watto hadn't heard of today's sponsor Keeps, he wasn't able to do anything about it, and now he lives his life as a Toydarian with regrets. Well, he lived his life as a Toydarian with regrets. Unfortunately for Watto, Keeps wasn't available on Tatooine, but it is available here on Earth. Keeps is an incredible service for men who are losing their hair and want to do something about it. Something I wasn't aware of before deciding to work with Keeps is that 2 out of 3 men start balding before the age of 35. I've never really had to worry about that. It doesn't run in my family and I have a ton of hair, plus I'm still in college, and I think a lot of my viewers probably don't have to worry about hair loss anytime soon either, but if I were to start losing it for some reason, I'm not sure I would want to go with the bald look. I doubt it would work for me. I think it needs to be said that some people absolutely can rock that look. I mean, just take one look at my boy Lobot or bald Obi-Wan from the Clone Wars. I mean, they are killing it, but shaving it all off isn't the answer for everyone, and if you're losing some hair and want to do something about it, Keeps is the answer for you, and the sooner you do it, the better results you'll have. Keeps is very affordable. They deliver right to your door every 3 months, and you don't even have to physically go to a doctor. They will find the right treatment and medication for you online, and there are multiple options. If you do want to take action and prevent further hair loss today, go to keeps.com/battlefrontnight and get 50% off your first order. That is keeps.com/battlefrontnight. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's get into the news I was talking about, which comes directly from EA about the future of Star Wars games. Last week, EA held a conference with their top investors that was public. Anyone could watch it if they wanted to tune in. In total, the conference was over an hour long, and they covered all of EA's various franchises, but when they got to Star Wars, the CEO of EA, his name is Andrew Wilson, dropped some info that kind of lays out what we can expect from Star Wars games moving forward. He started out by just discussing how successful they've been with everything they've done so far, and specifically mentioned the success of both Battlefront titles, plus Fallen Order and Galaxy of Heroes. From a certain point of view, I mean, he is correct. Every game he mentioned has been a huge success if you're only looking at them in terms of financial success. Both Battlefront 1 and 2 sold very well despite the controversies both of them had at launch, and regardless of the reputation Galaxy of Heroes has, that game has made EA over $1 billion, and let me repeat that, $1 billion from microtransactions alone, which is insane. Fallen Order is kind of the only game from EA that really hasn't had any downside. I mean, critically, it was very well received, and as of last month it had sold over 11 million copies, which was 5 million more than EA had estimated, and we also know that some sort of sequel is on the way, and the assumption is it's dropping next year. However, despite all of that, I've been seeing a lot of people online assuming that EA and Star Wars are not going to continue their partnership past the end of their current deal, which ends in 2023. Well, the EA CEO kind of slowed down those rumors to almost a halt, as he said EA plans to double down on Star Wars games, and that their expectation is that both the Star Wars IP and their relationship with Disney will only have strong opportunities moving forward. The question is, what exactly does that mean? Because that's kind of CEO talk. Well, first and foremost, this is probably good news for at least the immediate future, because for the next 3 years, EA has an exclusive license with Disney to make Star Wars games. Disney is not allowed to offer the brand to any other publisher, and from what I understand, the only reason LEGO Star Wars is coming out is because LEGO had a deal with Lucasfilm from before the Disney deal, but other than LEGO, any Star Wars game that comes out has to be from EA until 2023. So, for the next 3 years, it's a good thing EA is actually committed to the license, because it probably means we're going to be getting at least 1 to 2 games every year for the next 3 years. I think EA probably feels like they need to prove to Disney that they should be offered another exclusive deal after 2023, because right now, if we're looking at what they've done with the license in the 7 years they've had it, it's a pretty small lineup. I mean, they signed a deal in 2013, and in 7 years they've only put out 3 actual games, Battlefront 1 and 2, and Fallen Order. That's not even to mention that in 7 years there have been 3 Star Wars games that were well into development before being cancelled, and for a license as huge as Star Wars is, EA haven't done a ton with it in the time they've had it, so I feel like the next 3 years are really going to show us EA doubling down on that license, like the CEO said. Obviously, we have Squadrons in just a few months. From what we've heard, a Fallen Order sequel of some type is planned for next year, and EA already has plans for more sequels past that one, and in all honesty, I think it's very likely EA does something with Battlefront sooner rather than later. I mean, a new generation of consoles is coming out this year, and I guarantee that was at least one of the factors that played into EA cutting support to Battlefront 2. From what we know, EA basically took everyone from the Battlefront team and put all hands on deck to get Battlefront 6 out ASAP, so I think after the brunt of the work for that game is done, EA will get going on something Battlefront related, either a Battlefront 3 or some type of spin-off. I mean, just the idea that there's going to be a new generation of consoles and EA isn't going to capitalize on that with a new Star Wars shooter is pretty laughable. They'd be idiots not to. I've seen some people mention that EA's license expires in 2023 and they wouldn't want to put out a Battlefront game close to the end of the license because they wouldn't be able to support it for years if the license wasn't renewed, but I really doubt that would be a concern. I imagine if EA gets approval from Disney to release a game, they'll be allowed to support it as long as they want to. Also, from what the CEO said, it doesn't even seem as though their partnership not continuing far into the future is even a concern. I have a feeling Disney is probably okay with the financial success of these games, and when it comes to their reputation, in all honesty, DICE really did pull off a bit of a miracle with how they turned around the general perception of Battlefront 2. With how much the game was trashed at launch, I mean, that's the kind of game reputation that is really hard to shake, but despite everything post-launch being far from perfect, I have to give DICE credit where it's due for redeeming the Battlefront name to a certain extent. I have held this belief from the very beginning, but I truly think the only reason EA gave DICE the funding to work on Battlefront 2 for so long with basically no microtransactions is so they could save the name and the franchise, because if they had just pulled the plug a few updates after launch, the Battlefront name would probably have been damaged forever, and EA definitely didn't want that. I guarantee they want Battlefront to be an ongoing series, so turning Battlefront 2 around was kind of necessary. If it were just some random game that wasn't attached to a franchise or a license like Star Wars, I guarantee EA would have instantly pulled the plug after launch with that kind of a disaster, but since it was Battlefront and Star Wars, EA kind of had to save the name and the reputation. When it comes to EA's license past 2023, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this, but I just wish Disney would introduce some competition to the license, because I think that's what would be best for Star Wars games moving forward. Let EA continue with Fallen Order sequels and the Battlefront franchise, but let some other studios use the Star Wars license for other games. The best thing for quality is competition. If there is no competition, EA doesn't have to try nearly as hard with the license. I do think for the next 3 years we are going to see EA really putting their best foot forward when it comes to Star Wars games, not because there's direct competition, but because EA definitely wants another exclusive deal past 2023. And while I don't think it's the best thing for the license if it does end up being exclusive again, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they do end up with another one, but obviously we're going to have to wait and see when it comes to the specifics of that. The short-term news is good. The next 3.5 years are probably going to be filled with more Star Wars games than we're used to, and long-term, it at least sounds like EA is here to stay in some capacity, and I think opinions on that are definitely varied, so I would love to hear what you guys have to think about that. Anyway, with all of that being said, that is going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed it and could drop a like, I would definitely appreciate it. And if you are new around here, feel free to subscribe. We are like 500 off 250,000, which when we hit that will be an absolutely massive dub. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.